Welcome to the Madison Miller Podcast. Tonight's first guest is somebody that is a superstar on ESPN. It is Mr. John Buccigross. How are you doing on this night?
Doing wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So the trade deadline is Monday at 3 o'clock Eastern Time. There's been a couple trades already. What do you think is the biggest storyline as we get closer to Monday?
Probably Chris Kreider. After all, he's the best player out there who's playing very well right now. A guy who can plug in on your top six forwards, either your first line, or if it's a very good team, a second line, which can really fortify your squad. So I think Kreider, will the Boston Bruins step up, and will someone else try to block that from happening in the Eastern Conference, not only to get Kreider, but to prevent the Bruins from getting him? So that'll be interesting to see what happens. I know the Rangers want to sign him. They like the player. They like the person, whether it's term or money. Obviously, whether it's per year or how many years is probably the why it hasn't been done yet. So that'll be the thing to look at.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see what the Rangers are going to do as a team. That's obviously my favorite team. Chris Kreider is certainly somebody on the market. Henrik Lundqvist has been a name thrown out there. To me, what's tricky is that he has the no-move clause, and people are tossing Colorado out as a destination for him potentially. What do you think are the chances they move from Henrik Lundqvist, too?
Probably would be tough to do by Monday, but, I'm sure if they went to him and said, listen, you're not going to play, you're not going to be our guy, we're moving forward with the young goalies. Maybe you don't want to get traded in the middle of the year. Maybe you want to ride out this year and then get moved in the summertime or at the draft, so you don't kind of uproot your family right now and have to leave New York and leave the family behind. Probably he'll probably stay in New York, probably keep his place in New York. I know he loves the city, so maybe he doesn't want to head out there in late February. And if they were to make the Stanley Cup Finals, that's 4 months away. And even though that is, life goes fast, and that'll be in the blink of an eye. It might seem long to him, and he might not want to do that. But I imagine either they've already had that conversation, or we'll say, listen, Henry, we have a deal. If you want to go, you haven't won a cup, we're not going to send you to a crappy team. We would only send you in a situation that we think you have a chance to win. It's given this organization a lot, and so we owe you that. And it's just a matter if he were to say yes or no.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And like I said, Colorado's the team that people have speculated for him. I can't really think of any other team that is a contender that that could use him. Who do you think's under some pressure to make a move for the deadline in terms of playoff teams?
The Penguins kind of made their move, so I think they're feeling good. The Bruins might feel a little bit of that. Even though they played so well, they're just, their window is closing quickly here with Bergeron and Marchand, entering their mid-30s. So, and obviously Chara he goes a year at a time. So I imagine they're, Krejci as well, another guy who's, leaving his prime years. So I imagine a little bit of that. A lot of it's psychological.
Yeah,
needs to make moves.
The Bruins, to me, are under some pressure, too. Somebody else I thought about, I don't know if they're going to get into the playoffs or what, they've been an underachiever this year, has been the Predators. I feel like that's another team that's under some pressure to make a move. Edmonton, Calgary, I could name a bunch of teams I think are under a little bit of pressure to make a move. But yeah, Boston stands out for sure. And you're right about Pittsburgh. They already made their big move. And that was, I think, the best move of the deadline so far, them getting Zucker from Minnesota. I think he really is going to thrive playing with Sidney Crosby. What do you think was the best move so far that's been made?
Yeah, a lot of teams, like you said, Jason Zucker is going to help Crosby. The left-handed shot, which I think helps Crosby. I think Crosby, because he plays so much on his backhand, goes around the net. I kind of like him with playing with a left-handed shot. Certainly the Capitals with Brendan Dillon, not a superstar guy, but they're looking to get a little more tough, playoff tough. And certainly what Tampa Bay did with Blake Coleman, same thing. They want to be a playoff team, not a regular season team. They think he might help. He's got some nastiness to him. So, nothing earth-shattering. nothing huge. If the Predators are going to do anything, then it'd have to be huge. They made their big moves free agency in the offseason. It would be tough for them to do something big. But you never know. You never know. But David Poile might do. But I think for the most part, it's really about Kreider and then maybe just some little defenseman moves. Gustafsson will probably be traded from Chicago. I know the Capitals liked him. They liked Vatanen. They liked Dylan. They got Dylan. And DeMello as well, but he moved. So, other than that, I think teams they know what, like Edmonton would love to get someone to play with Connor McDavid, who's hurt now, but they're not in a position to give up a first-round pick and get Chris Kreider, because he'd be a great fit with McDavid, but they don't feel like their organization's deep enough yet.
Yeah, I would be surprised if Chris Kreider went to Edmonton. I feel like it's going to be like Boston or a random East team that blocks him from going to Boston, like you had mentioned. I thought the Blues were a possible fit, but Tarasenko could come back, so that would be kind of a weird fit. Colorado, Rantanen's injured. Maybe he can go there. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting fits for Chris Kreider. A team in the Metro Division that's made a move to shore up their defense a little bit was the Islanders. To me, I think they need a top six forward. I don't think they're going to trade for Kreider, although I've heard that they're interested in Kreider. What do you think that the Islanders are going to do at the deadline?
Yeah, obviously they're trying to find a way to score goals and get guys that can do that. I can't imagine the Rangers would trade Kreider to the Islanders unless they really overpaid for him. They could kind of hang that over their heads. They'd rather not do that, obviously. So, yeah, it's just the Islanders, there's obviously their team's breathing down their neck. They're kind of a bubble team now, it looks like. And so whether it's, Carolina, Columbus, all these teams can do stuff. They have first-round picks. They have people they just took in the first round. So any of these teams, if they want to make a move for Chris Kreider, can get him. They all can. Anyone can step up and give that first-rounder, second-rounder, prospect, whatever, and make it happen. So that's going to be fun to watch because really any team in the league could make the move for him.
Yeah, but the Islanders to me are under some pressure to get somebody to play with Barzal and with Anders Lee up front in their top six. I think that's a team that really needs to make a move to improve their offense because they've been really bad at offense lately. So and their defense has been keeping them competitive in games. So they, I think, need to do something. The Blue Jackets you mentioned, I think they're very interesting. They've really exceeded my expectations this season. Currently without Seth Jones, do you think that they'll do something possibly to shore up their defense without Jones or even get somebody for offense to play with Pierre-Luc Dubois and those guys?
Yeah, it'd be interesting because, obviously they made the move last year to try to get Duchesne. They didn't give up big prospects, but so they have to be a little bit careful. You can't get too thin. But they've done really well with all the injuries and Atkinson, and you mentioned Jones now, but they got the hot goalie in Elvis, and Werenski's an all-star player, and so that's an interesting team. We'll see what they like to make moves, but I don't think you'll see anything big from Columbus, and they'll probably stand pat. They might do something minor, but I don't think they'll do anything significant. They're going to try to ride this out till they get healthy.
Yeah, I think they ride it out as well. You mentioned their goalie, that kid Elvis. There's a lot of good young hot goalies right now. There's him and Igor Shesterkin. I think that's a fun storyline to finish the season. Can any of those guys sneak in and potentially win the Calder Trophy, or do you think it's going to go to Cale Makar or somebody like that?
Yeah, I think Elvis is in the top three now for sure with Quinn Hughes and Cale Makar, and I love Shesterkin. I think he's going to be a star. I can see why the Rangers are going with him. He is a great demeanor, really athletic, great skater. He looks like the real deal. So I can see why they're trying to move on from Henrik and get rid of that big cap number that he has, and just turn the page. He looks really good. We'll see. I just don't know if he's going to get enough games to qualify really to get in the Calder mix. But if the Blue Jackets were to make the playoffs and Merzlikins keeps going, I think there's a good chance he could get it. But Quinn Hughes and Vancouver, if they make the playoffs, I think he might get it. So it's gonna be a fun Calder watch. Makar's kind of slowed down after his hot start.
Yeah, that's right. Quinn Hughes is another good rookie defenseman. Makar has kind of regressed since a hot start too, and that was your guy to win the Norris. I was just listening to our podcast from the preseason. You were big on McCarr, and you looked good there for a while, and then it kind of died down a little bit. He maybe he does still win the Calder. We'll see. The Maple Leafs made a couple moves to upgrade their roster. They are currently out of the playoffs as we're speaking. I think that's kind of strange. They made the coaching change in the middle of the year. Do you think that they have another move in them?
Yeah, I don't think so. They're so capped out. They seem to be on a good trajectory. I don't know why they signed John Tavares. That was just a bad sign. It put them in a bad situation economically. It didn't make any sense when they had all these young guys. They knew they were going to have to pay. They're probably going to have to trade one of them over the summer, whether it's Nylander. I don't think they're going to trade Marner, but I imagine they're going to trade. And they might try to trade Tavares if someone will take them. They're just really in a tough spot with all that cap space. It's hard to add guys. And, it's just still though, that being said, they seem like they have the roster of a team that should win. It's just not coming together, not enough guys, I guess, playing the right way. Again, still very young. Not every young team wins. Some young teams win, but not everyone does. I agree. It's perplexing. I still would have to, someone said, hey, you have to bet a paycheck on whether or not they make the playoffs. I still would bet my paycheck if I had to that they would. You just can't imagine they're not going to, at some point, figure it out, win 7-8 in a row, and get in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's crazy to me that they're tied with Florida in points, but Florida has the tiebreaker over them. The Tampa Bay Lightning made the big move for Blake Coleman. You talked about that before. Do you think they gave up a little too much to get him? Because I really like the haul New Jersey got back for him, and I think Coleman's going to help Tampa.
Yeah, we'll see. You never know how prospects turn out. Are they going to be a top 2 player, or is it going to be a good, solid veteran like a 3 or 4 guy, which is still good. But if you're Tampa Bay, you can get those guys in the future, and obviously you never know how draft picks are going to turn out. They're late round picks, so they're kind of hit or miss. So this is their window. Let's face it; they have a great team with great future Hall of Fame type players, and if they feel that kind of piece can make the difference, I like them being bold and add a guy like Blake Coleman who just plays really hard and intense, and he can be a 20-goal guy, good character guy. A lot of personality, so I think he fits right exactly what they need, and I think they were smart to be proactive and make the bid. If you want a house, if you have the house of your dreams and you have the money, and it's $500,000, but if you give them $550,000, you probably get it. Yeah, and you already have that much money to begin with, or close to it. Just get the house if you want it. So if you want the player, get the player.
Exactly, yeah. I think they're under pressure in terms of playoffs because obviously they were swept by Columbus last year. So I think they're under some pressure, certainly come playoff time. A team that you thought was going to surprise this season got to a good start, but has tailed off and is really in the lottery, and that's the Sabres. Do you think they're going to be a seller here on Monday?
I'm sure any piece they can move to create some draft picks or create cap space where maybe they can go after a free agent. Of course, they have to overpay their free agents to get them to come to Buffalo usually. It's a frustrating situation. They got Dahlin number 1 overall. You thought for sure he looks like a generational defenseman. And maybe he can still come together. When you have an Eichel and you have Dahlin, it's a good start. You just got to have the right pieces after that, and some of those other guys who are okay players, not great players, can stick around. And then somehow you get lucky while you plug another guy or get an amazing young goaltender like Verzlikins has done with Columbus. It's just you just gotta keep grinding and hope at some point it just kind of clicks. I like how Eichel has really taken that leadership step. He really has elevated his game again, and I think in the long run this is going to help him. These challenges of carrying this team on his shoulders is going to help him. It hasn't been easy for him. Like all those young Toronto guys, it was kind of easy because they had a lot of good players, and they've kind of floated. And look where they are now. They still haven't quite taken off. I think Eichel going through this challenge is going to be good for him and the team long term.
Yeah, we'll see about that. I agree that it's going to benefit long term, but it's just crazy that the Sabres, it's been like 8, 9, even 10 or 11 years since they've been in the postseason. I remember the last time they made it, I think, was in 2011. Ooh, breaking news, but this isn't hockey related. Kyrie Irving's out for the year.
Yeah, I saw that there's a chance he would be out for a month or so, and they probably realized, let's just forget about it. I mean, a month is almost playoff time anyway, so take the rest of the year off, him and Durant, and then we'll start fresh next year.
Yeah, Spencer Dinwiddie's going to be their starter going forward. Yeah, I just looked on my TV to see Brian Windhorst speaking about this injury on SportsCenter. Back to hockey. The Blackhawks, you mentioned the defenseman that you think they're going to move. Do you think they move anybody else?
Probably not. You know, you never know who might overpay for Brandon Saad like they did when the Columbus got Artemi Panarin for him, one of the most lopsided trades in NHL history. So, yeah, they're in a tough spot. I think, what they have to realize, do they go to Patrick Kane and say, Patrick, do you want to go back to Buffalo and play there? And we can get a giant haul, create cap space, and kind of try to make our transition to the next phase of our career here in Chicago with the team, because obviously they're aging. They're now not making the playoffs year after year. It's a time for them to kind of start over a little bit. But it's hard. Look at Detroit. And they're so terrible right now. And you mentioned Buffalo, how long it's been since they've been in the playoffs. It could be 10 more years till the Red Wings are in the playoffs. You don't know where you're going to get, who you're going to draft, how it's going to come together, how it's going to click. It's scary for some of these GMs and franchises once you get as bad as Detroit is right now, how long they could be bad. And because, like you said, you mentioned Buffalo. It's been forever. They got to the postseason, and that's what Detroit could be looking at with their brand-new arena. So it's tough for Chicago to try to, what do you do here? I mean, obviously, Kane's still a great player, but do they consider something like that to really start to stockpile? Kirby Dawkins like a really good player. If they can keep getting guys like that and think 5 years from now where they could be. Because if they kind of ride out Kane and Taves, they might just be on a treadmill.
Yeah, I'm very fascinated for Chicago. And that Kane scenario is very interesting. I think that I've heard other people say that about Kane, that whether it would be possible if he accepted a trade to Buffalo and they could just get the monster haul and then restart. The Predators, in my opinion, really have been a major disappointment this season. Do you think that they'll make any moves to the deadline?
Who's that?
The Predators.
Oh, yeah, I don't think so. I think, like I said, signing Duchesne to the big contract, although David Poyle's not afraid to do big things. But, yeah, that's not a great mix right now. There's not a lot of, just talking to some of my friends around the NHL, there's not a lot of respect for that room or for that roster. So I don't know if you're going to see it at the deadline. I think you could more apt to see it at the draft. David Poyle just might ride out this year and then try to reconstruct the roster over the summer.
Yeah, to me they're more an interesting summer team than a deadline team. We talked about the Blues and them being a candidate for Chris Kreider. Do you think that Vladimir Tarasenko will be back before the playoffs?
I think he will. I think they'll probably bring him back late March, early April. All he needs is 2 or 3 games. He'll be fine. They can simulate good practices, and he can get his work in. He knows what he's doing. So even if he didn't get any games, he could step in the playoffs and be fine. So, I'm sure as soon as he's ready to go, they'll put him in. But I would think he'll be ready to go in a month or so.
Yeah, I would be very interested to see how he looks when he comes back and the mix of the players there and see if they can actually do it and repeat, even though I think the West is pretty tough. A team that I expect to be a seller come Monday is the Kings. Do you think that they're going to move Jonathan Quick or anybody?
I think they would if they could. I don't know. He's got a big cap number. I don't know if anybody thinks that Quick has a lot of game left. He played a lot of games in his career when they were winning Stanley Cups. They would roll him out there 68, 70 times, and then, of course, the playoffs. So you wonder if he's one of those guys who's going to kind of fizzle quicker because of all the games he played and how athletic he was and his hips and his knees and how they really are. So I'm sure the Kings, they're doing a good job. They got a good haul with Toffoli as they continue to restock here. They'll have Alex Turcotte. They drafted. He's playing at Wisconsin this year. I've seen him play a couple of college hockey games. Hasn't lit the world on fire, so we'll see how that pick turns out. But, yeah, I'm sure if there's anybody they do, just moved Alec Martinez. So they're definitely in full build mode, and if they could move people, because that's certainly a destination where they could attract free agents. So the more cap space they can create, the better.
Yeah, I would expect that they are open for business there. The Anaheim Ducks, in my opinion, are a team that I think will potentially be open for business. I haven't heard much from them before the trade deadline. What do you think's up with the Ducks?
Yeah, I mean, they don't have a lot of good players, so it's going to be hard for people to move. But, unless they want it, unless someone like a Silverberg, someone could be interested. Maybe they think, okay, let's move on from him and keep, getting younger and kind of moving on from our older guys. Obviously, Corey Perry's gone. Ryan Getzlaff is still there. But, they're just, they're in a weird spot. They're one of those teams that has a bunch of stuff. You can't quite figure them out. But they got the great goalie. And, the organization's in pretty good shape. So I'm sure they just kind of look at the waters, not passive, not aggressive. Just if someone comes to them or they see an opportunity, they'll make a proposal.
Yep. Oilers, how about them? They really haven't been mentioned in terms of players and players to trade for since they are in a playoff position right now. They've been one of the bigger surprises, in my opinion, in the league this year. What do you make of the Oilers and possible moves for them?
Yeah, they'd like to add a top six forward, but they just don't want to give up a lot. They don't want to give up a first-round pick. They're trying to build their franchise. The franchise needs to. They're not going to win a cup this year, so they don't want to lose their first-round pick. But they might trade their second or third. Someone like the Fascineo of the Red Wings. That's the kind of player that they could get for a third-round pick or something like that. I think Steve Eisman wants a first-round pick for AA, but the Oilers aren't going to give him that. So, because he could actually play with Connor McDavid because he's so fast, and McDavid probably could milk out 25, 30 goals from him. So, someone like him, but otherwise, I'm sure they're going to add something for like a third round. I'd probably rather trade a third or fourth round pick and get some sort of forward. We mentioned Anaheim, maybe someone off that roster that they can plug in, get McDavid back, and then add a top six forward for him to play with.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of who else could possibly go. How about Ilya Kovalchuk? He's somebody that I think could move from the Canadiens.
Yeah, someone might want him. He's more like a stationary power play guy. He couldn't play with Edmonton. He couldn't keep up with McDavid probably. But you're right. It's possible that someone could look at him as one-timer on the power play, third line minutes, 12, 13 minutes a game, power play. Hungry guy. So, yeah, you never know. Montreal's certainly a team that is in a tough shape, trying to rebuild. And, again, that's a scary proposition. Montreal, again, one of those teams that it could be a long time until they make the playoffs. So you get behind some of these franchises. I mean, there's like 10 really good franchises in the East right now. It's kind of hard to break through. So it's interesting. So I'm sure they'll try to move something to try to make it better.
Yeah, and Ottawa has two guys that I think could be moved, Anthony Duclair and J.G. Pageau. I think Pageau is more likely to move than Duclair. What do you think that they can get back? Because I know all these teams, like the Devils, are getting a first-round pick and a prospect back for Coleman, and Toffoli fetched a nice haul. So what do you make of Ottawa's situation, who they can move?
Yeah, they could move both of them. They'll definitely move Pageau for sure. He'll definitely be dealt. They're probably waiting for a home run deal for him. Someone could step up this weekend and get ahead of it. Duclair went forever without scoring a goal. I'm not sure if people are convinced of him as a playoff guy. A good team don't know if they can trust him in terms of defensively or an all-around game, but certainly has some good pop and good goal scoring. He was cold, so maybe he's due to get warm again. So Ottawa's certainly open for business, and they want to keep adding pieces and try to create a good young core going forward.
Yeah, I think that's a team that obviously wants to get younger too. Do you think that there could be a surprise name traded that isn't really mentioned on the TSN website or in the media?
There's always that chance. There's always that chance. You never know if someone wants a player and then someone raises a player they want, and they say, well, and then the trade could become bigger where a GM didn't expect it to because he really wants a certain player. But usually have a pretty good idea what happens. But, yeah, there's always a chance for a surprise. Nothing that really comes to mind. Like I said, maybe Toronto would shock the world and trade Tavares somewhere. Who knows? Unlikely, but, you just never know. And hockey's an emotional sport. And sometimes people wake up one day and say, let's do this. And they have these conversations. Some teams are very good at keeping stuff quiet. Penguins and Devils and Predators, you don't hear stuff get out. It just kind of happens, like Blake Coleman just kind of boom, it happened like that. So, there's always fans because some organizations let the word get out and some are a little more tight-lipped.
Yeah, and then I saw earlier that, speaking of the Senators, Nemestikov got scratched today, and they said it was like I think they worded it maintenance or something like that. It's literally one of those key words that, like, a trade may be coming. So, Nemestikov wouldn't surprise me, but, like, he's somebody that was traded before the season from the Rangers to Ottawa. So, or was that the year before? I don't remember when Nemestikov went to Ottawa. I think it was this year, right?
I can't remember either, to tell you the truth. He's been off my radar.
Yeah, I think it was last year, because I remember that trade, like, happened before the season, and then I heard that he scratched tonight, so, you never know with these things, and you're right, Coleman did kind of come out of nowhere. A couple hockey things before we go. Most surprising team this season?
Certainly Vancouver has been a surprising team to be around the playoff picture, like they have been. Thought there might have been another year away because they were, a lot of the big players were so young. They certainly have I think caught people by surprise. I'm a little surprised how the Penguins have kind of come back to really be a Stanley Cup contender again. I had wondered if that was going to happen. They definitely took a step back the last couple of years. You wonder how can they redo their roster with big cap numbers like Letang and Crosby and Malkin. But, boy, Jim Rutherford really did it. The Brandon Tanev sign was such a good sign. It was just the kind of guy they needed. You mentioned Zucker getting him. And now when they're healthy, they're suddenly, I could see them winning the East. I could see them beating, getting to the Stanley Cup final. They certainly wouldn't be a favorite. Boston and Tampa Bay are probably better. But at least they're back, and Washington's right there too. I would think one of those four is going to make it. But it's really surprising how the Penguins, to me, have bounced back into Stanley Cup contender category.
Yeah, I'm with you there. The Penguins, I thought, were going to be a good team, but not on the level of Capitals and Bruins and Lightning.
Exactly.
Yeah, I feel the same way about the Penguins. How about a team that's disappointed you this season?
Well, the Sabres, Pat, we talked about them in the preseason. I thought they had made some pretty good moves, and obviously you're waiting for these young guys to get better. Eichel got better again. He gets better every year. His numbers continue to go up. Dahlin didn't quite, he didn't play like Cal McCarr played last year in the playoffs, and he hasn't taken that major level back up yet. The goaltending, I thought, might have been better than it would have been, and Casey Middlestat looks like a wasted draft pick. He's not working out. Maybe it'll still happen, but so that, to me, that I'm pretty disappointed at Buffalo with Eichel. It stinks not having these great players not in the playoffs, because that's when the league gets so much attention, those 2 months in the playoffs. And not to have Eichel, and maybe even not having McDavid if they don't make it. I think they're going to make it, but if they don't, again, you have the two best players, like baseball without Mike Trout. Not getting these guys in the postseason kind of stinks.
Yeah, that would kind of stink if like a great player like that is in the playoffs. So we saw it with McDavid a couple times. Like, he wasn't in the playoffs, so it's probably going to happen this year, even though the Pacific Division's pretty close. A team that surprised me, I agree with the Penguins in terms of, like, where they are, but Vancouver's a good one. Arizona's been surprising to me. Edmonton, I mentioned. The Islanders were, but they've tailed off a little bit. And then, for me, most disappointing, that's a tough one. Probably Nashville, who I thought was going to be a top 3 team in that division. But they
that's probably the right call for the disappointing team would be Nashville. They certainly look like a playoff team. You really thought they got to make the playoffs, but now they might not. And that would be the number one disappointment with all the big free agents signing Duchesne and building their roster up. It didn't work out because it looked like they were going to be a Stanley Cup team. They got there and lost. the Penguins, and then it's tough to get back.
Yeah, there's been a couple of those teams over the last couple of years that made the Stanley Cup final, and then all of a sudden they're rebuilding. The Rangers in 14.
Yeah, Sharks.
And then the Sharks.
Sharks
We haven't even talked about the Sharks. They traded Brendan Dillon. We mentioned that, but we didn't really talk about them as a whole on the show. But yeah, them too. Maybe Nashville if it continues to go sour, even though they still have some talent on the roster. And then Chicago, even though they won, but they're trending in that direction too. And then obviously the Kings, who we discussed as well. Who do you think has the best chance to win the Stanley Cup?
In the East, like I said, Boston, Tampa Bay, Washington, or Pittsburgh. I'd be pretty confident one of those four teams will make the finals. The Western Conference, certainly St. Louis is built to get right back there again. I think Calgary, if they could somehow get it all together, they kind of look like a team. They have playoff guys like a Chuck. You got to think if they get hot and get some momentum, that's certainly a team that you could see getting there. Dallas is such a good team defensively. They have some veteran guys, Sagan and Ben, who could get hot and carry them. But I think the Eastern Conference is going to win the Stanley Cup. And I think it's going to be Washington, Pittsburgh, Boston, or Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I have a feeling it's going to be one of those two teams from the Atlantic. And speaking of the Capitals, Alex Ovechkin is 2 goals away from 700, and he's been in a little bit of a slump. I can't believe Ovechkin's going to be at 700. I remember it was a couple years ago he was at 600, and then 5 years ago he was at 500. And this guy just continues to score at a high level. What do you make of Ovechkin's chase for 700 goals?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it because I actually wrote a piece for SportsCenter as soon as he got to 698, and it's been sitting there on the shelf for about 2 weeks now, waiting for as soon as he scores it, they're going to run. We've already edited, I voiced it, it's all ready to go. Just got to wait till we get 700. So I hope it's tonight so I can watch SportsCenter and see my piece. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Not a surprise. I think he's got a great chance to pass Wayne Gretzky's record of 894. It's right there for him. Just got to play till he's 40 years old and average. It's not that difficult for him as long as he doesn't get hurt. He should be no problem passing Gretzky's record. And he's a streaky guy. Hasn't scored in 5 games. That's the longest scoreless streak all year for him this year. But as we know, he gets them in bunches. He's shooting a lot. They're going to start to go in, and he'll get his hat trick or 2 goals. And he does well against Montreal and Carey Price. So tonight could be the night.
Yeah, and the game's on NBCSN as well, so it'd be kind of cool if he got the 700 on national television. When does the hockey, the college hockey tournament start? That's in March, right?
Late March, yeah. Last weekend of March, the regional 16 teams make the tournament, and then after the weekend play, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, there'll be 4 teams left, and they'll play 2 weeks later, Easter weekend, in Detroit. For the Frozen Four.
Yes, and you do that with Barry Melrose every year. You're not on SportsCenter tonight, are you?
No, I'm on vacation. So yeah, I'm enjoying the hockey from warm climate.
That's awesome. Good for you. You deserve a vacation. So maybe we'll hear your piece on SportsCenter tonight if Ovechkin gets to 700.
There you go, inside information. As soon as he gets it, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. I hope you enjoy your vacation. Maybe we'll have you on again before the playoffs.
Sounds great.
Alrighty, have a good vacation.